Hey, it's me, Saul, and welcome to, surprisingly, the beginning of the Harpie 101 series. Now, I normally start a 101 series by telling you how to build a deck and then how to play a deck, but quite frankly, the hot topic, what seems to be on everyone's minds right now, is how to counter the Harpie Lady archetype, so that's what I want to tell you about here today. Harpie Ladies are extremely strong. They consist of level 4 wind monsters, and then they go into their boss monster, and they can just gain card advantage like no man's business. They can send cards back to your hand during their turn, during your turn. It's really powerful. However, there are some key things that you can do or just keep in mind that can really mess up a Harpie player's strategy. The first and most prevalent weakness that I can point out when it comes to the Harpie archetype is the name effect. Now, the name effect is actually a series of effects that the majority of the cards in the archetype have. Now, the Harpie Lady cards all have different names. Cyber Slash Harpie Lady, Harpie Channeler, Harpie Perfumer. However, they all have the effect that states that when this card is on the field or in the graveyard, and some of them even state that when they're in the deck, they are treated as having the name Harpie Lady. They are all given the exact same name, which is a strength for them because that means that all of their archetypal support can work for all of the monsters in the deck. They're all exactly the same. The problem with this, however, is there are a series of different cards in the game that target cards that have the same name. The first and most easy one to use is number 18, Heraldry Patriarch. Now, this takes 2 level 4 rank monsters to summon. It is a rare card, right? Once per chain during either player's turn, if 2 or more monsters with the same name are on the field, which means the Harpies having any 2 monsters on the field will satisfy this requirement, you can attach 1 XYZ material from this card, choose 1 monster among them, and destroy all other monsters with that name. As long as this card remains face up on the field, your opponent cannot summon monsters with the same name as any of the monsters chosen for this card's effect. The rest of this card's effect is irrelevant because what this has just done is shut down the entire Harpie archetype with 1 card. Because since they all have the same name, none of them can now be summoned. So what you want to do is, if they have 2 monsters on the field, Cyber Slash Harpie Lady and any other Harpie monster, you target the other Harpie monster to make sure that Cyber Slash gets destroyed and nothing else can now be summoned. The ordinary Harpie monsters can't really boost their attack that high. This card has 2,200 attack, so it's going to be extremely difficult for them to beat over you. They have to find another way to get around this card. You have shut down their main deck strategies. So that's extremely useful. The fact that they have the same name, which ties them all together, is actually their downfall in this instance. Another card with a degree of relation to the name effect is Karma Cut. You discard 1 card, target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, and banish that target. Then banish all cards with the same name as that monster from your opponent's graveyard. Now, this is one that I'm less sure about because when Harpies first came out, I first-hand experienced this, whereby one of my Harpie monsters on the field was Karma Cut and my graveyard got banished, right? The cards in my graveyard just up and left. Now, this, I haven't experienced it since it happened in the first instance, and so I haven't been able to get any footage of it, but it may also be that this is no longer the case. I know that Harpies received 1 patch whereby you no longer have to have your toggle on to activate Cyber Slash Harpie Lady's effect. This might have been changed, or it might just be the case that this only works on specific monsters in the graveyard or on the field. This one you can take with more of a grain of salt. However, it's something that's good to keep in mind. The reason why it's not that important as to whether or not this will work or not is because using Cyber Slash Harpie Lady's effect, they can just bounce the card that you've just tried to Karma Cut back into their hand to avoid the Karma Cut. However, what you've done in that situation is force them to use their bounce preemptively, which means you opened up space for you to make your plays relatively unrestricted. You can use spells again because Cyber Slash can only bounce once per turn. So this is kind of just something to help you out in that regard. Moving on from the name effect, there's also a slightly more advanced trick that you can use to dance around the effect of Cyber Slash Harpie Lady, and it's called chain blocking. Now, how Cyber Slash, let me just read you her effect. This card says that when a spell or trap card is activated, quick effect, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls and or 1 Harpie monster that you control and return it to the hand. Now, I know that that sounds extremely strong, but what this card may not immediately cause to click in your head is that this being a quick effect means that it has to chain to the activation of a spell or trap card. What this means is, if your opponent activates a spell card and then you activate a monster effect in response to that spell card, that means in the chain that's been formed, the monster effect is the last thing to have happened. Cyber Slash will not be able to bounce off of that monster effect, which means her effect will not activate, despite the fact that a spell card was activated. The spell card has to be the last thing in the chain to resolve for Harpie Lady to be able to jump onto the chain and activate her effect. I know it's a little bit technical, but think of it like this. In Duel Links, you have a thing called priority, right? So if I do something as a player, my opponent then has the opportunity to respond. So if your opponent activates a spell card, they will not immediately then be able to activate Cyber Slash's effect. They have to pass priority back to you to be able to do something. If you are able to activate a monster effect when priority is passed over to you, when priority gets passed back to your opponent, Cyber Slash won't be activatable unless they have another spell to try and proc her effect. Now, thinking of it from your point of view, if you activate a spell card, then your opponent gets to activate an effect, so they will just activate Cyber Slash Harpie Lady and bounce you back. So maybe don't do that. Maybe don't do that one. But yeah, so that's effectively how the rules of chain blocking work. So long as you can respond with a monster effect of some kind, you can actually make it so that she can't activate her effect at all. Triamids can do this, Boojins can do this, Digital Bugs can do this. Heck, any deck that has quick play monster effects can chain block Harpie Ladies. Now, you obviously won't be able to dance around it forever because the effect is activatable as many times as they have spell cards to use, so you might run out of chain blocks. But if they don't have enough spell cards to keep on trying to put on that pressure, you might be able to hold them back for long enough to get rid of Cyber Slash Harpie Lady. Now, on to the general counters that I just wanted to mention, but these are things that you probably know. Effect negation is excellent. Cards like Ultimate Providence to negate and destroy Cyber Slash Harpie Lady. Now, a lot of Harpie players will run things like Lance or things like Swallow's Nest, but a card like Ultimate Providence, because of its spell speed, cannot be responded to by those cards. So Cyber Slash Harpie Lady will be destroyed if she attempts to activate her effect while you have this card on the field. Now, if nothing that I've said so far has piqued your interest, that's understandable. Not everyone has the gems to go into the box for heraldry. Not everyone runs decks with the card advantage and the draw power to be able to use discard traps. If that is the case, then I point you to a very free-to-play friendly option that solves both of those problems. This is a bit of a sleeper pick. It's a trap card called Showdown of the Secret Sense Scroll Techniques. It's kind of out there, but stick with me. When your opponent activates a spell, trap, or monster effect with the same name as a card that is in their graveyard, taking us back to the name effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. In order to have Synchro Summoned into Cyber Slash Harpie Lady, a Harpie player will have to have at least 2 Harpie Lady cards in the graveyard on turn 1 before they try and activate Cyber Slash's effect to bounce cards. This means that right off the bat, this card will be usable to negate Cyber Slash Harpie Lady and destroy her. You obviously can't stop the initial cards from setting up the way a card like Ultimate Providence can, but this is a good free-to-play option that not many people have talked about so far. It's not the craziest thing in the world, but if you're really strapped for options, this is a very easy card to get that might be able to help you to deal with Harpies. And it's also useful in a situation where someone is using the same trap or spell more than once. Most people run spells and traps at 2 to 3 copies in their decks. One-ofs aren't really recommended, so this can be quite useful. Same goes for certain monsters, so have at this. It's a Harpie counter, but it can also help you out against other decks. Another quote-unquote tip is to just have monsters that aren't targetable. Lunalights are an exceptional example of this. Saber Dancer just is a win con, because once it hits the field, if they do not have Lightning Vortex or another card that can destroy you without targeting, well, Cyber Slash Harpie Lady's effect targets, right? So she can't touch it, and she's not big enough to beat over it, so a non-targetable monster can really shut this deck down. The last general counter that I can think of is just to swarm the field with as many big monsters as you can. Blue Eyes is very good at this, right? Because effectively, Cyber Slash can bounce once per turn. Now, if you have 3 Blue Eyes monsters on the field and you add more on the next turn, you're going to have more monsters than they have bounces. So if they haven't figured out a way to boost themselves over your attack points in a different way, then they're gonna be kind of stuck if you have more monsters than they can manage to bounce. Obviously, Harpie Lady players may side into cards like Lightning Vortex or Thunderspark Dragon to try and avoid situations like this, but assuming you catch one off guard and you're able to just overwhelm them with brute force, that might also work in your favor. So that's how you counter a Harpie Lady deck. Please take these tips, run with them, have fun with them, experiment, see if you find any other tips that weren't mentioned in this video. If you do, leave them down in the comments. I very much appreciate you for watching. Please, if you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like. It really does help us out over here on the channel, and subscribe to see more information on how to play and counter more decks in the meta and out of the meta, because I just love talking about various decks. With that being said, I've been Saul. Hopefully you've been entertained, and I will see you next time. Bye.